Hello, and welcome to Real Cheating Story. Okay, he's gone. Are you satisfied now? She said. Yeah, sorry for interrupting you too, I replied. But satisfied? You mean satisfied that he is no longer in our front room in the middle of the day? You mean satisfied because of that? I mean, how could I not be satisfied? At least I stopped you from cheating on me, at least for the moment, I said. You're overreacting, Richard. So what if Ashton and I had an intimate moment here? We didn't do it in our bed. To my mind, it wasn't cheating, Kathy replied. My wife of 16 years. Overreacting? How do you figure? I asked, feeling justifiably frustrated. She sighed. It's only cheating if the person involved has some hope of replacing their partner. Adam has no such hope. He feels a need that you don't fulfill. Sorry, Richard, but you're boring. And I wouldn't be surprised if I bore you too. I guess we've been married a long time. Boring is part of the equation. Boring? You mean I am boring? And you're very creative in your definition of cheating. I believe if we looked it up in the dictionary, we'd find that the accepted definition is a lot different than yours, my love. And that's exactly it, Richard. I am your love, not his. I believe that. You and I will grow old together, faithful to a fault. If I take exception to your definition of things, what does that mean for us? She went pensive. I guess it means that you will have to leave, she said. Her words surprised and stunned me. Am I hearing you right? You plan to separate if I don't accept you and Ashton being together? Is that really what you're saying? No. I'm not saying that at all. Divorce would have to be your choice. I will never opt for a divorce if it's up to me. I'm just saying that unless you are okay with me being with Ashton, you cannot stay here in the house until you are okay with it. I can be patient with you, Richard, but I will not allow you to stay here and dampen everything. You have to stay somewhere else until you get your head on straight, she said. I almost laughed, but not quite. Let me get this straight. You plan to continue seeing him whether I like it or not because I'm boring? You're kicking me out if I don't agree with it? Is that about the size of things? Yes, more or less, pretty much. The house was my parents'. It belongs to me, not us, so never doubt that I can get you out at least for the short term. And I say the short term because I know that over time, you'll come to your senses and realize that me being with Ashton would be a good thing for you as well. Really? Well, let me ask you. What if I decide to have someone else on the side? I mean, accept your relationship with Ashton and require you to do the same. How about that? Do it, she said without hesitation. Yeah, you say that because you know I never would, I replied, trying to maintain my stance. You still haven't lost all your looks either. Just do it. I can't very well object to you playing if I'm doing it, she said. I knew she had the advantage in this scenario. Finding someone else would be harder for me than for her, and she knew it. But even given that, I wouldn't do it. It wasn't right. And what about Marilyn? I said, playing my trump card. Marilyn was our 18-year-old daughter, now a senior in high school. My wife's choices were not going to sit well with her, that I was sure of. Kathy snickered. Marilyn already knows. She caught me in Ashton months ago. My mood darkened. What did you say? I asked, my tone betraying shock and disbelief. Oh, don't get your panties in a twist about Marilyn. Yes, she knows, but she made me promise not to hurt you or rub your nose in what I was doing. So you see, she loves you enough to want to protect you. That should make you feel good about her, she said. Even if you're not lying, you've broken your agreement with her. I am hurt, and you are rubbing my nose in it. You didn't need this mess. I'm not lying. You are overreacting, and there won't be any custody issues because she's a technical adult, and also because we are not going to be divorcing unless you are even dumber than I was. Doing what I did with Ashton here in the house today was, by the way, the first time. And I promise you it's the last time. Dumb on my part, Kathy said. No, dear. It's not dumb. It's arrogant and contemptuous of me, I replied. I never held you in contempt. Surely you can grant me that much, Richard, she said. I'm not granting you anything, but it doesn't matter. Now we at least understand each other, dear soon-to-be ex-wife. Get this. I am filing for divorce. I will be asking Marilyn to stay with me until she heads off to state, unless she opts to live with her mother instead. If that turns out to be the case, neither one of you will ever see me again. I hope I'm not being vague here. I really do not want to be vague or misunderstood. Jesus, Richard, did I say you were overreacting? I should have said that you're crazy, said Kathy. No, dear. You're the one who has been involved with Ashton. And crazy? Maybe I am. I did marry you, didn't I? I should have suspected it, especially given how you've neglected me over these past weeks. How long has it been for us? A month, maybe a month and a half? She looked surprised. Really? It's been that long? I will remedy that immediately if you will allow. Forget it. I have no use for you anymore. Too bad. You were a good wife while it lasted, the marriage, that is. Well, I thought you were a good wife. I guess I thought wrong. So, screw you, screw him, and screw anyone else who thinks what you're doing is okay. My implication was not lost on her. If my daughter was actually okay with what her mother was doing, she was history. Yes, even my daughter. I would write off even her if she was so much as tacitly okay with what her mother was doing to me. Now wait a minute, Richard. You're not thinking of going off on Marilyn, are you? She's still a kid in high school. She doesn't have the experience to know how to make judgments or really think logically, said Kathy. Go off on her? Heaven knows. But she better not be okay with you cheating on me. I will not accept that on any level. Jesus, I wish Ashton and I hadn't decided to do it here today, she said. Yeah, sorry you got caught, but not sorry you did it. Not sorry you've neglected me, and not sorry you've put my daughter in this position. We both turned when we heard the back door open and close. Marilyn was home. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad, she said, tossing her backpack onto the couch. Hi, honey, said her mom, giving her a warm smile. Marilyn picked up on the tension. What's wrong, Dad? She asked, concern in her tone. I guess I was pretty transparent. We need to talk, you and I, but it can wait until after dinner, I said. I needed time to gather my thoughts. After dinner should be no problem, she replied, nodding tentatively. After dinner and the dishes were done, I headed for the front room. Marilyn followed me without my having to ask. Kathy hung back in the kitchen, busying herself with who knew what. Dad, said Marilyn, and I motioned for her to sit while I remained standing. Just a few questions, dear heart. Kathy came in but leaned against the kitchen entrance to monitor things. Did you know that your mother had a lover and kept that knowledge from me deliberately? I asked. She took on a stricken look. Kind of, she admitted. Next question. Do you approve of her actions? Not exactly, she said, but Mom explained that what she was doing wasn't really cheating. I nodded. Okay, final question. Your mom and I will be getting a divorce. Who would you rather live with, her and her partner or me? I was smiling, as though I had already won the race. But the truth was, I was terrified I would lose it. I don't want you to get a divorce, said Marilyn. Your mother gives me no choice. She intends to keep seeing her partner whether I like it or not. She says I'm boring and that at least until I can bring myself to agree to tolerate her actions, I have to move out. So, a divorce is going to happen. Which is it? Her and her partner or me? No, screamed Marilyn. Can't you just ignore her and Mr. Adams? He isn't around much. Please, Dad. Couples lose interest in each other after many years. Even I know that. Mom is just playing a little, that's all. She told me that, said Marilyn. I thought today was the first time Kathy had chosen to be with someone else. Lose interest in each other? Who's this we you're talking about? I said, waving her off. I guess I have my answer. You and Kathy will be gone shortly, I said. The bitterness in my heart and soul had to be apparent to both of them. What? You can't mean, started my wife. Daddy, you need to listen to Mom. She loves you. Not that other guy, said Marilyn. Mr. Adams isn't trying to take your place, and even if he were, Mom would never let him, she insisted. Really, Dad? Addie? I snorted. She doesn't love me, of that I'm sure. She loves him. I'm just the one paying the bills, but no more. She and I are done, and so are you and I. I knew I was being cruel on some level, but so were they. My daughter ran upstairs, and I heard her slam the door. You could have been a little less cruel, said my wife. Look at the way I see it. You and Ashton have destroyed this family and my relationship with my daughter. I hope you realize just how badly you've chosen him, I said, nodding toward the stairs. Oh, you are so stubborn, she replied. Stubborn? No. I'm just utterly intolerant of what you're doing. And in case it matters, I am hurt, jealous, and filled with bitterness. Have a nice life, all of you, I said, then headed upstairs to gather my things. I was packed and on my way downstairs in half an hour. As I packed, Kathy kept up an almost ceaseless barrage of ill-conceived arguments, railing at me to calm down and rethink my decision to leave. She even threw in promises of affection and intimacy if I would reconsider. But I was determined to never touch her again, regardless of how everything played out in the weeks and months ahead. I was gone and settled into the Rockville Lodge within an hour of leaving. Kathy's parting shot was that she would ruin me if I dared to opt for a divorce. That was the rub. I had adamantly held that I would be divorcing her, but did I really want to go that route and risk financial issues? I decided to do nothing for the present. If I met someone I wanted to spend my life with, it might be a different story. But in the near term, inaction was going to be my modus operandi, regardless of the message it would send to the two women who were now no longer in my life. I guess I need to digress for a moment. Who are we, exactly, the Nelsons? Well, as to that, the following might be of some utility. Me, Richard Nelson, 38, auto mechanic, not terrible looking, slightly balding, a bit overweight, an ex-track and field athlete. My wife, also 38, 5 feet 7 inches, 120 pounds, a housewife, very pretty, dark-haired, an ex-cheerleader. Marilyn, 18, pretty, popular, still growing into her womanhood but looking to be a mirror image of her mom, and she was still the apple of my eye. That, despite what I saw as her betrayal of me, I'd be a long time getting over that one, if I ever could. Meanwhile, Kathy sat at the bar, glancing at her watch and then at her phone every couple of minutes, as though she were waiting for the delivery of her lottery winnings. She took another sip of her martini. "How's it going?" Kathy asked the bartender as he approached. "Okay," she said. He was Jim Barton, head bartender at the Blue Lagoon, and he knew when to chat and when to stay quiet. He didn't respond to the obvious tension, but ambled off down the bar to respond to a couple of customers. Another woman plopped down on the stool beside her. "Carla, Jesus, you startled me," said Kathy. "Sorry. Anyway, what's up?" "You sounded stressed when you called," said Carla, age 36, a good friend of her current partner. "Yeah, well, I am, I guess," said Kathy. "Oh no. What happened?" "Richard caught me with Ashton, and he's moved out. I told you doing it at your place would be a mistake." "When did all of this happen?" asked Carla. "Yesterday. I don't know what I'm going to do if he doesn't pay the bills. We'll lose the house." "He'll pay them. It's in his best interest," Carla replied. "I don't know. He's pretty mad. I called Ashton earlier, and he offered to move in and pick up the slack if Richard doesn't return by the end of the week. Ashton makes more than Richard, quite a bit more. But will he want to be paying bills in the long run? I mean, will he want to keep our relationship going if he has to cover for Richard? It's just that Richard and I have fallen into a rut, sexually among other things. I need some variety. But now what should I do, Carla? It would be bad if Richard were to return and find Ashton moved in. And then there's Marilyn. She and Ashton get along okay, but she is kind of on the fence because of me cheating on her dad." "I see," said Carla. "But she's young, and I was able to convince her that her dad wasn't losing anything and that what you did was just meaningless recreation. I got lucky with that one. She essentially told her dad that it was no big deal. But of course, Richard is not having any of that. He's written her off too," said Kathy. "Oh my," said Carla. "Yes, oh my, for sure," said Kathy. "Girl, you've got to get hubby and daughter back on speaking terms. If you can do that, you might be able to claim the role of the good guy and get Mr. Straight Arrow to forgive and forget. But 10 to 1. Good old Ashton's going to end up as collateral damage in this little tableau." "I see what you're saying, and I think you may be right," said Kathy. "But I really don't want to lose Ashton either." "You may not have a choice, or better said, you may have to make a choice. You should wait a little bit, though. Give Richard a chance to cool off. Maybe if he gets lonely enough, that might be another chip you could play," suggested Carla. "Yes, actually, that was one thought I had. The one thing I am sure of is that it won't be too long before he starts thinking about what he's missing. He's a little stubborn, though." "Okay, I will be doing a bunch of thinking on what you've said, said Kathy. Yeah, do that. I'd hate to see you two broken up. You've always been good together, despite needing to play around on the side. Oh, and again, you might want to wait a while longer than the end of the week before you let Ashton move in. Maybe a month or two at least. If Richard does pay the bills while he's out, then Ashton shouldn't move in at all, if you get my meaning, said Carla. Meanwhile, Marilyn was with her boyfriend. I don't know what to do, Glenn. I need my dad, but he hates me, she said. The boy laughed. Look, Marilyn, you're what, 18? I'm just 19. We're kids. You're still in high school. The one thing I'm sure of is that our parents really do love us. Your dad will come around. We've got to go back, she said. He nodded and started the engine. As he turned onto her street, he said, What you need to do is tell your dad that you need him. Let him know that he's the one you want, not that guy your mom is with. Yes, but how do I do that? He won't talk to me, she replied. He will. Or maybe you could get someone else to tell him how you feel. I can do it for you, he offered. She gave him a look. You? You really think you can? I can if you want, he said. She snickered. But then she looked serious. I'll think about it. Meanwhile, Kathy was talking to Ashton. Yes, he left, and he's really upset. It's going to be a while before he's in the mood to even talk to me, let alone return to our bed, she said. Jesus, how are you going to get on if he divorces you? Ashton asked. You get to move in and pay the bills for the foreseeable future, she replied. He sighed. Okay, no problem. I can do that. But you will have to be picking up expenses right away when you do. Would that be all right? You will be getting a lot more attention than before, though. Any chance of getting a little of that right now? I think I just might be able to accommodate you. So why don't you come over here? They soon had a passionate encounter, and when they were done, they lay beside each other. You really needed that, he said. It was not a question, she replied. Yes, finally, I needed that, especially after what my husband did the other night, leaving me and Marilyn high and dry like that. So Marilyn will be staying with us, not him, if and when I do move in. He kind of dumped her when she wouldn't condemn me for being with you. The kid doesn't know what hit her. Not yet, anyway. She will, and it won't be pretty for either of them. He nodded. The Rockville Lodge was cheap, close to work, and had the added benefit of being next door to the Wild Horse Bar and Grill. The bar was especially appealing under the circumstances. I needed to drink a lot. My daughter siding with her mother and expecting me to just deal with it had hurt me deeply. Now I was alone. No family, no girlfriend. I was utterly alone. I went to work every day, claimed my seat at the Wild Horse every night, and slept. Except for eating, that was pretty much my entire life at the moment. I wondered how Kathy was going to view me not divorcing her immediately. I had implied that I would, and she probably thought I might just be opting to follow her lead. That I had to leave, but only until I got my head straight about her relationship with Mr. Adams. She would have been wrong to believe that, notwithstanding my intentions to remain absent and unreachable by her. If she made the effort to contact me, I was of the opinion that she would eventually come to me to pay the bills. If she didn't go the divorce route herself and involve the courts. And Marilyn, my daughter, I would speak to her if she came to me, but she would have to abandon her mother, just as she had abandoned me. I would not be my wife's willing victim under any circumstances. Then it was 6 months after the split, and I got a visit. But it was from neither Marilyn nor her mother. No, I got it from Mr. Ashton Adams himself. It was Saturday morning, and I had to go to work. I was subbing for my partner in crime at the shop, Grant Schuler, who had gotten married the week before and wanted to enjoy his honeymoon. As I was getting ready for work, I heard a knock on the apartment door, catching me mid-bite into my toast and cream cheese. I got up to answer it. Yes? I said to the well-built, dark-haired man staring down at me. Hello, Mr. Nelson. I'm Ashton Adams, he said. I slammed the door in his face. He knocked again, paused, then knocked again. I opened the door once more. Get away from here. I have nothing to say to you, I said. Your daughter sent me, not your wife, he said, and I paused at that. My daughter? Tell her to come here herself if she wants to talk. Look, give me a couple of minutes of your time, and I'll be out of your hair, he said. It had been months since I left, and and I had to admit I was curious, if nothing else. I didn't respond to his request but headed back inside, leaving the front door open. He followed me, closing the door behind him. I took a seat at the little utility table the lodge provided and nodded toward the seat across from me for him to sit. He did. "I guess you hate me to the bone," I said. He nodded. "I understand." "No, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't be with my wife." "Mr. Nelson, yes, your wife and I do have a thing going, but it's not love, nor is it likely to ever be. I guess you could say we're friends who occasionally spend time together. We don't go out and have fun like dancing or bowling. Everything is more casual." "Get to it, Adams. What are you here for?" "You mentioned my daughter. Marilyn misses you. She has cried every night since you left. Your wife and I are hoping you'd be willing to mend fences with her. Kathy wants you to come back home. I've been staying there these past 3 months, paying the bills that you should be paying. I understand your anger and your reasons for doing what you're doing, but frankly, you have no right to treat your daughter as if she doesn't exist. She's still just a kid, and she needs her dad. Your girlfriend told me that she didn't want me around unless I was okay with her being with you. She thought I'd be a downer all the time, and she was right. I would have been. Yes, she told me that. But she's changed her mind. She said you should come home, blanket and all. She is trying to come to a compromise. But you and she will still be seeing each other, right?" I asked. "Yes to the first, no to the second. We would be together, but not in your house. What I'm saying is that she is no longer insisting you be okay with it. She realizes that was asking too much of you. Damn you. As long as she continues to cheat on me, there is no hope of us getting through this mess. I need someone who actually loves me." "I can't make you reconsider," he said, "but she does love you, and she is a one-man woman in the true sense of the term. What we have is just for fun. There's no commitment. I will not reconsider unless my conditions are met, and maybe not even then, given everything that's happened. But you can tell Marilyn she can come live with me if she can break away from you." "Okay," he said. I tried. "Just think about what I said. You'd be well advised to do so." I closed the door behind him as he left and leaned back against it. Then I had another visitor 2 days later. I began to wonder if there was some kind of conspiracy at work to get me to accept my wife's terms. After Adam's visit, I figured that all hope of reconciliation with Kathy was at an end. Boy, was I wrong. My next visitor, however, was someone I had to take more seriously. "Hi, Dad," said Marilyn. I jumped. "Marilyn, you startled me." I had been working on a transmission when she made her appearance at midday. "Got time for lunch, Dad?" she asked, looking hopeful. I didn't answer her right away. I scooped some hand cleaner out of the can and started cleaning the grime off my hands, staring at her as I wrapped my hands together in a somewhat successful effort to tidy up. My tone was level, neither negative nor overly enthusiastic. She gave me a small smile. I dried off my hands and headed back inside to grab my coat. She waited for me, knowing what I was doing. She had been to the shop many times in the past, but it had been more than 6 months since the last time I'd seen her, and during that lengthy period, I hadn't heard a word from her. I had to believe that Adams might have had a hand in that, but who knew? I went over to Grants Bay, where he was doing a tune-up on an old Chevy, and let him know I was going to lunch. He glanced in my direction, saw who I was with, and gave me a thumbs up. Millie, the shop secretary, and Grant were the only ones still around when we left. The rest of the crew had already gone to the cafe down the street. I didn't want a lot of questions from my fellow workers when I got back, so I had her drive to Denny's on Maple. We'd be anonymous there. "Nice ride. Your mom buy it for you?" I asked. She looked a little surprised. "No, Ashton bought it for me." I think she felt a bit embarrassed by her display of opulence. "Nice of him," I said, my voice even. She didn't respond as we pulled into the parking lot, got out, and headed for the entrance. She walked slightly ahead of me. For the first time, I noticed that she was dressed nicely, expensively. She reminded me of a spoiled rich kid, a good-looking one at that. Well, she was my daughter. Whatever else I might think, she certainly didn't look like the daughter of a working-class mechanic. We were escorted to a table in the middle of the bustling cafe. It was lunchtime, after all. I ordered a patty melt, and she ordered a salad. I couldn't help but smile, This was the girl I used to know, or at least thought I knew. She would have ordered a burger back in the day. As we sat with our iced teas in front of us, she gave me a condescending look. Dad, you have to go back and see Mom. You just do. She talks about you almost every day. Frankly, Ashton has told her to be quiet more than once. Dad, she loves you, not him. He might satisfy her needs, but you made her day. Used to, anyway. Yes, she's selfish, and she wants both things. Ashton is easy and willing to go along with her plans. It's only you who is being difficult. Are you really so contemptuous of me that you think you can come here after everything that's happened and treat me like a child who doesn't know anything? I asked. I'd really like to know what your condescending attitude is based on. I didn't mean to be condescending, she said. Do you have any idea how ridiculous and unrealistic you sound? No husband is going to put up with being his wife's backup plan. But she expects me to be just that, and apparently so do you. She sighed. Actually, I don't expect you to. It's clear to me that you're too old-fashioned to give in. Still, I had to give it the old college try. Oh, and you do know I started college this past quarter, right? I didn't get the email, but I figured you probably had, I said. She had the decency to look at least a little guilty. Yeah, I guess communication from our end has been kind of lacking. Neither has it been from your end, she said, satisfied with her retort. I promised my wife that I wouldn't be talking to her, and I guess I told you that you'd be subjected to the same treatment unless you break off your relationship with her. So, I'm the only one keeping my word. Looking at you today, it seems your mother's boyfriend has done a good job of winning you over. What, the Corvette out there? I said, pointing out the window. Uh-huh. You think she started that? Oh yes, I think you've sold out. A 10-year-old Rover I would have kept in good condition would pale in comparison to what Mr. Rich has you driving around in. What Rover? She asked. It's at the shop. You know I keep it in top shape in case you decide to come live with your dad, the one who isn't cheating on his spouse. She gave me a hard look. I'm staying at the college, Dad, not with them. But I'm there a lot, mostly to help Mom keep it together. Keep it together for what? I asked. Yes, she can't get over you leaving her like that. She needs you. Dad, she wants Ashton, but she needs you. Ashton's okay, but he's almost totally devoid of sensitivity. You, on the other hand, are Mr. Sensitive. Mom needs you. I need you. Oh, she needs me? For what? She has a boyfriend to satisfy her needs, pay her bills, and get her daughter an expensive car. Why not start getting those needs met by him? Dad, you are such a pain sometimes. I plead guilty, but daughter dearest, you ain't seen nothing yet. Daddy, please think about coming home. I looked at her and tried to gauge the sincerity of her request. Maybe when the time is right. Well, at least you didn't just blow me off, she said. Anyway, Adam moved in with her. I mean full-time. He's paying the bills you should be paying. Oh, should be, just like your mother should be loyal only to me? You're so old-fashioned. Hell yes, I'm old-fashioned, and I like it that way. When the food arrived, we talked a little longer, and I got a pretty good picture of life at the other Nelson residence. It seemed as though, as Marilyn described it, Ashton and my wife were living in a business arrangement. Polite interactions most of the time, with occasional bursts of passion. Marilyn's position was like that of a prized employee who made the company look good but was not necessarily indispensable. The Wild Horse was more than just a bar to me. It was a refuge for the first several months after the split. I was often a solitary soul, drinking, watching the dancers, and occasionally talking to a bartender who noticed my loneliness. Then I met someone who gave me a push, encouraging me to engage with other patrons, some of whom were women. My inspiration was Jillian Starling, a name I later learned was a pseudonym. Her real name was Lillian Gray. Jillian's day off was Saturday, and she often said it made her feel human to be out and about with a more respectable crowd. We talked a little, as barflies often do, but not about anything serious. I never asked her anything personal, and she never asked me either. It worked for us. Hence, I didn't know she was a working girl. Well, not right away. Then I did. One late evening, I found her sitting on the ground, leaning against her car, visibly upset. Jillian, can I help? What? She replied, wiping her tears. I mean, can I help? Your car is broken again. No one will talk to me, let alone help me. Not out here in the parking lot, she said, her frustration evident. Your car is broken? Yeah, no guy wants to be seen with a working girl out here. Decent people might get the wrong idea, she said with a hint of sarcasm. Working girl? You're saying you're a hooker for pay? Yes, I am, she said, almost defiantly. Well, I can help you. Do you have a key? I don't work on Saturdays, she replied, making it clear that my intentions were misunderstood. No, I wasn't looking for, well, but I do know something about cars, I said. She handed me her key ring, which she had been clutching tightly. You'll need to move, Jillian, so I can get at the hood release inside. She looked sheepish but got up and stepped aside. I popped the hood and used my flashlight to check under the hood. I saw the problem right away. Your battery's dead. Huh? It can't be. I've only had it a month. It's a new battery. Yes, but your alternator belt is gone. You've been running on battery power alone for the last day or two, and now it's dead. It's an easy fix and not expensive. Come on. I'll take you home and come back in the morning to fix it for you. How's that? She gave me a suspicious look. No, Jillian. I'm not looking for anything. It's late, and I don't want to head back to the shop tonight. I'll do it tomorrow, I promise. Okay. But how do you know so much about cars? I'm a mechanic, I said. But honestly, any teenage boy might have noticed the same thing when I looked under your hood. It's really not a big deal. I just need to get a belt, a few tools, and some daylight to do the job right. I hate working on cars in the dark. A mechanic? You never told me that. No, I don't want to hear a ton of complaints about what went wrong with everyone's car when I'm out at night, so I usually keep that to myself. You're a special case, a damsel in distress. I took her home, keeping her ignition key, since I'd need it in the morning. I assured her I'd have her car back to her by noon the next day, with Grant helping me out to deliver it. She seemed tentatively grateful when I left with her keys. The next day, I returned to fix and pick up Jillian's car, with Grant driving behind me in his Silverado. I charged her $26, just the cost for the fan belt and no labor. She was effusive in her gratitude, which made me feel like I'd passed some kind of test as a friend. No offer for a trade for the fan belt? Grant asked as we drove back to the shop. No offer, I replied. I'm not into taking advantage of women. Really? A sweet piece like her? You might want to consider lowering her standards a bit. Maybe if I wasn't still married, I said. He gave me a look. You're saying you'd be willing to get back with Kathy after everything she did to you? No, I don't want to go back to her, but I haven't thought about my marriage in a long time. She cheated on me that one time, but aside from that, she's been a good wife. Yeah, well, you're a stronger man than I am. I could never get past that. I'd need some serious surgery to get my foot out of her throat, he chuckled. We talked a little longer until we got back to the shop. It occurred to me that Grant might have a point about being open to something with Jillian. I sure was feeling the pressure of not having been intimate with anyone since breaking up with Kathy. Maybe Kathy thought I'd be desperate enough to give in to her charms, but she was wrong, at least as far as she was concerned. When I arrived at the bar that night, I noticed Jillian was there, and I was a little later than usual. Grant had asked for my help with some heavy lifting. How's it going? I asked as I approached her. Oh, hi Richard. Good, and you? I'm good too, I said, smiling. Really? The sight of me makes you happy? She asked, a playful glint in her eye. Absolutely. Got time for a drink? She gave me a knowing look. You know I'm working, right? I figured, but that doesn't answer my question. Yes, sure. I always have time for my favorite mechanic, she said, smiling back. We took seats at a table along the far wall. So, what do you want to talk about? She asked, and I had to think of something. I had just seen her and decided I wanted to talk to her. How about you let me be one of your clients for the night? I blurted out something surprising, unsure if it was me or her who was more taken aback. My cheeks flushed, tilting the answer to that little mystery in my direction. Jillian laughed and asked, Do you know how much I charge for an evening of my time? I chuckled nervously, acknowledging that I had a business to run and a desire for companionship. But to answer your question, no, I don't know how much you charge for an evening. She smirked. Okay, it's a flat $100 an hour. Or if someone wants the whole night, it's a flat $500. But since it's you, I could offer a 20% discount. I could see in her eyes that she thought she was out of my financial reach. I smiled back. Okay, down for the night, and no discount needed. She looked surprised, and I continued, yes, really? Her place was quite small, but she showed me around. In the back was a bedroom, perhaps 12 by 6 feet, with a small twin bed and a closet crammed into the wall. Toward the front of the apartment was a combined dining and kitchen area, also about 12 by 6 feet, serving as an all-purpose room with only a small table and 2 chairs. In the middle of the narrow hallway was a tiny bathroom. Kind of small for a woman, isn't it? I remarked as we re-entered the dinette. Yes, but it's only $250 a month, including utilities. What can I say? I can afford it, she replied. I nodded, realizing that part-time work didn't pay all that well. Why don't you have a seat for a few while I change? She suggested. I did, and she was back in less than 5 minutes. Quite the record, I guessed. When she returned, it was clear the evening had its own warmth. She wore a sheer yellow outfit and heels that sparkled in the light. I took her into my arms, ready to make the most of our time together. As we settled down, I found her absolutely beautiful and felt drawn to simply enjoy her company. Do me, she said, and I responded, yes, of course. We enjoyed an intimate evening together. Once we were both exhausted, we lay quietly for a while. She broke the silence, asking, so was I worth it? You bet, I replied sincerely. I just hope you didn't find me as dull as my wife has. No, you were fine. You could improve, but ultimately you were quite acceptable, she reassured me. We showered together afterward and headed out to the corner diner for breakfast. I handed her the money, explaining, breakfast is on you. It's all I have on me. I had spent $500, and my rent was going to be 2 weeks late. She laughed, okay, fair enough, and we enjoyed our meal. After breakfast, we kissed goodbye for the moment. Meanwhile, Kathy was with her friends. How did you come by this little piece of information? Carla asked. I saw them together at the Wild Horse, Carla replied. Kathy sneered, so my moralistic one-woman man is playing around too. Makes one wonder for sure. What are you going to do? Carla inquired. Not sure. This is all off the charts, but that woman better not think about sticking around for long. I won't stand for another woman I don't approve of being anywhere near my man, Kathy declared, not realizing the hypocrisy of her words as she spoke to her friends. She soon found herself following Jillian to a bar, watching from a distance with a glass of white wine in front of her. Kathy observed Jillian clearly engaging with someone, and a mix of emotions swirled in her mind. Thoughts of revenge and half-formed plans began to take shape. She was determined to put an end to this craziness. Her husband was hers, not some opportunist. As she prepared to leave, Kathy noticed Jillian with a young man who seemed much younger than her husband. The sight struck her, igniting a new resolve as she followed the couple outside. They got into a pickup truck that drove to the Crimson Lake Motel about a mile from the bar. Kathy parked her car and watched as the young man went into the office to pay for a room while Jillian waited in the vehicle. He signaled to Jillian, who got out and walked to him, and they locked arms as they headed toward a room at the back of the complex. Kathy noted the room number, her heart racing as she made a call. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cars arrived, one marked and one unmarked. The driver of the unmarked vehicle approached her car. Hi, Kathy, he said with a friendly smile. Hello, Barry, she replied, gesturing toward the room. They're in room 19. Barry raised an eyebrow. Long time no see. Now you're calling me to deal with a situation like this? Yes, I want to put an end to it, Kathy explained. She's been messing with my husband, and I can't let that continue. Barry considered her request. Since it's you asking, I'll handle it, but she'll probably make bail by tomorrow. You're aware of that, right? I understand, Kathy replied. And yes, I have video of him handing her the money. Good. I'll need it to make the arrest stick, Barry said, accepting her phone as she handed it to him. You sticking around to see how this plays out? He asked. Definitely, but from a distance. I'm not ready to let my husband know about this just yet. That'll be at a time of my choosing, Barry headed back to where the marked car was parked. Kathy watched as her friends spoke with the officers, who approached room 19, knocked, announced themselves, and entered. A satisfied smile spread across Kathy's face when she heard Jillian's startled scream. Later, Richard received a call from Jillian. "Richard, I'm in jail downtown," she said. "For what?" he asked, already suspecting the answer. "Soliciting," she admitted, and silence hung in the air for a moment. "Thank you, Richard. I really do appreciate it," she said. They discussed the details, and he promised to come down and post her bail as soon as possible. When he arrived, he learned she would be arraigned that evening. He decided to wait around, and a little after 8 p.m., her group was brought in. The judge set her bail at $5,000 cash or bond. Richard paid the required 10% to the bondsman, and Jillian was released. They went to Denny's, and Richard struggled to digest the situation. "How did this happen?" he asked after their coffees arrived. "I met a young man. He asked how much, I told him, and then we went to the motel room, and the police came," she explained in one breath. "And they let him go?" he asked, incredulous. "Yes, he was a sailor, and I think that's why," she replied. Richard felt a surge of anger. It didn't seem right that she was arrested while the young man walked free. They talked for an hour before parting ways, each heading home to their respective places. As Richard entered his house, he heard Jillian on the phone with her friend Carla. He approached, knowing he had to talk to her as Marilyn had asked him to. "No, Carla, he hasn't got a clue," Jillian was saying. "How could he?" No. He doesn't know Barry. I went to school with Barry, not Richard," Kathy said, her frustration boiling. "That woman won't be chasing after my husband anymore. A few days in jail will make her persona non grata with Richard for sure." I couldn't believe it. My wife had apparently caused Jillian to get arrested. That was the only conclusion I could draw from her words. I was furious and tempted to confront her arrogance, but then I had a breakthrough. I realized I needed to give my best performance, and it was time to start. I made some noise to announce my presence. "Richard, you're finally here. I'm so glad to see you," she said, greeting me with a sweet kiss. I smiled and kissed her back. "Yes, I'm here. I talked to Marilyn a while back. She convinced me that I needed to be a little less old-fashioned, so here I am." "Where's Adam?" "He's at work. He's been staying here," she replied, and I nodded. Knowing this was an ongoing arrangement, I could sense her suspicion but decided to keep playing the part. "We have some issues to work out," I said. "Yes, we do," she replied, her tone pleading. "If I may." I indicated I wanted to lead the conversation. "Yes, I would appreciate that," she said, clearly relieved. "You've been sleeping with someone who isn't your husband," I began. "And I have to admit, I hated that. But after much thought, I've come to the conclusion that you do love me." "I'm glad to hear you say that," she replied. "And I wouldn't be here if I didn't still love you." "Wait, you don't hate Ashton?" "Well, he's never going to be my best friend. But no, I don't hate him," I said. She sighed in relief. "Thank God. Are we going to be okay?" "That's my hope," I answered, and she came to embrace me, leading to an extended moment of hugging and kissing. "Let's go upstairs," she suggested, and we walked into what used to be our bedroom. I noticed there were no signs of Adams' things, which relieved me. "So, no picture of Mr. Adams?" I asked. "No, I wouldn't let him sleep in our bed. We used the guest room down the hall," she said. "And Richard, there is a picture of the two of us, he and I, in that room." I nodded, curious but not wanting to pry too much. "Tonight, you and I will share this bed," she said. "Okay, but tomorrow night, let's play it by ear." "Maybe I'll stay with him," she said, nodding toward the guest room. "I think that's fine. Knowing what's happening down the hall might be tough for me at first, but I'm okay with it." "Yes, of course," she said, reassuringly. "You have the right to do whatever you need to feel comfortable." "That's what I've been trying to convey from the beginning," I replied. Later that night, when she came to bed, I pretended to be asleep, facing away from her. She tried to check on me but saw I was out cold. I figured that might spoil her mood. After a while, she gave up trying and fell asleep. The next day, I met Jillian to discuss my plan for revenge. "Are you crazy?" Jillian exclaimed, looking directly at me. I almost laughed but managed to hold it in. This is a perfect plan to get back at her. She won't know we're onto her, and she can't object to me having someone at home if she has her boyfriend staying here, I explained. Isn't that going to be uncomfortable? Jillian asked. Not for us, but for her and Adam for sure, I replied. Maybe I should rethink this whole deal. Jillian smiled knowingly. Don't worry. I know where we're going with this, even if you don't. What's in it for me? Maybe I embarrass her a bit and make her feel guilty for what she did to another person, I suggested. After that, what then? She pressed. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Maybe we need to rethink this. Forget it, sweetie. I know where we're headed, she said, laughing. Okay, good. If you're sure, I replied. I am. And since we'll be living together for a while, I should tell you something. My real name is Lillian, she revealed. I smiled, realizing I had never asked whether Jillian was a stage name. That's a lovely name, but for now, you'll be Jillian. No need for them to know anything unnecessary. Agreed, she nodded. D-Day was the following Monday. After I had moved back in, I had told Jillian it wouldn't be uncomfortable for us, but I was wrong. I felt a bit uneasy as I realized Jillian was in the den. I wanted her entrance to be as dramatic as possible, so I needed to set the stage. Hi, honey, Kathy said, hanging her coat in the atrium and shivering from the cold outside. It was already November. Hi, I replied, trying to keep my voice light. Kathy glanced at me with a hint of concern, while Ashton gave me a sidelong look. Is something going on? Kathy asked. Well, yes, I admitted. What is it? She pressed. I hesitated. As you know, I've had some issues with you and Adam. Kathy nodded. Yes, I know, and I accept your explanation. Her smile seemed genuinely excited. I'm so happy you've come to this point. I know it wasn't easy. No, it wasn't, but I'm here now, I replied. Adam looked suspicious. Can I ask? He said. Yes, but let's go into the den so I can clarify things, I suggested, adopting an almost overly cheerful attitude. They followed me inside. As I entered first with Kathy right behind, I announced, surprise. What's going on? Kathy asked, clearly confused. Everyone, this is Jillian, a friend of mine. I introduced her, trying to keep the mood light. The looks I received from my wife and her boyfriend were almost enough to make me laugh. I held it together, though. Richard, what are you talking about? Kathy asked, still confused. Jillian will be staying in the room next to Adam's. They can share the hall bathroom. I figured it would work out, I explained. I thought it was a good idea having Adam stay here, so I decided to copy you, I added. But Kathy started, her concern evident. It's all right, isn't it? I mean, you and Adam are okay with this? I asked. I guess so. It's just so unexpected, she replied, her tone lacking confidence, but her words suggesting agreement. Do you think he knows you were the one who had her busted? Ashton asked quietly. No, nobody knows but you and me. It was an anonymous tip to an old friend, I said. If he doesn't know, then this is quite a surprising coincidence. Yes, for sure. But there's no way he could know unless one of us said something, and neither of us did. So, no way, I reassured him. Adam didn't look entirely convinced, but he shrugged and gestured that he was okay with it. Jillian offered to help Kathy with dinner, but Kathy declined, and Jillian didn't push it. After dinner, the atmosphere grew tense as bedtime approached. Kathy made it clear she wanted me with her for the night, which I had anticipated. I had shown Jillian to her room, and she seemed comfortable with the situation. I was already getting ready for bed when Kathy finally entered the room. Tonight, Jillian will have to manage without you, she said. Can I ask how long this has been going on? I replied, oh, not long. We've only been together once, but it was good. Different, like you said it was with Adam, she admitted. I watched her as she began to undress. What's Jillian like? Kathy asked. I don't know much. We've talked a bit. She works in public relations, no husband or kids. She's a little young at 28, I replied. It's just physical, honey, not the kind of commitment you and I have. Kathy nodded, but then she leaned in to kiss me. Oh, hold on, honey. You should have told me you wanted to be intimate, I said, stepping back. I just finished with Jillian before you came in. I thought you were spending the night with Adam, and honestly, after a long day in the garage and with Jillian, I might be a bit worn out." Kathy's expression changed, and she walked out of the room. "I'll be with Adam tonight," she said. A few moments later, Kathy joined Ashton. He looked at her and asked, "So, he doesn't know what she does for a living, right?" "Apparently not. He thinks she's in public relations," she said. Ashton chuckled. "Well, she kind of is, I guess. She definitely connects with a lot of people from the public sphere." He laughed again, unable to stop. Kathy became irritated. "Stop it, Adam. It's not funny." "Why not? I think it's hilarious." "It's not, and now he's got her right here in the house, reminding me of it." "Well, logically, you did the same to him," Ashton pointed out. "You came here after he moved, and you help with the bills. You actually have a right to be here, as far as I'm concerned." "Good point. It's hard to argue with you on that one. So anyway, how was it last night?" "You haven't said," she inquired. Kathy shrugged. "He was a bit clueless when I got to him. He just isn't that great in bed. If he were, I wouldn't be here now, would I?" Ashton snickered. "Yeah, right. Like you could do without the real thing after experiencing it." Kathy smirked. "You're good, but there are other factors to consider beyond exciting intimacy and stamina. Yeah, like financial security. And I've got that too. It's hard to find a downside to me when you think about it." "Yeah, you have your good qualities. I can't deny that. If you were just a bit more trustworthy, I might struggle to find a downside." "Untrustworthy?" "You might recall that when Sai abandoned you and stopped paying the bills, I stepped in to cover your expenses," she argued. "That's true, and I do trust you as long as I still have my looks and charm. But what happens when I age?" "Let me answer that. My so-called cuck will still be around, boring personality and all, while you'll be out chasing younger options." He spread his hands in a gesture of surrender. Outside the room, Richard listened to the conversation, feeling hurt by her words. Torn between confronting them or leaving with Jillian, he chose to go find her. I hurried down the hall to where Jillian was ironing a couple of her dresses. "We need to talk," I said. "Yes, we'll leave, but not until after we spend some more time together. Maybe in a couple of weeks. A little time with us together under their noses is the plan." Meanwhile, Kathy continued her conversation with Ashton. "Should we say something to them?" she asked. "No, they're going to be intimate. We know it, they know it, and that's just how it is," Ashton replied. "Are you jealous?" he asked. "No, not exactly. I'm a bit annoyed that I had no warning." "I gave him a warning," Ashton said. "Yes, a warning that didn't really have much impact." "Your warning was more of a softly phrased ultimatum," she countered. "Let's just go with the flow and not make a big deal of it. She's attractive, but she's not in your league. Don't worry about it." "Okay, I guess you're right." "You're always right, my big man," she said. "You know, sooner or later, he's going to have to make a decision, and it looks like he's opting for action. You might want to think about divorcing him to put him out of his misery." "I know, but I don't really want to. I mean, divorce him, yes, but it's not fair to you considering everything I said before." "I'll think about it," she replied. "Where are they?" Jillian asked. "In the den." "Let's go to your room and let them wonder about us," I suggested. I wasn't concerned about needing her permission after what I'd overheard. She smiled, took my hand, and led me down the hall from the kitchen where we'd been talking and sipping our hot teas. "What was that?" Jillian asked, hearing a loud noise. Ashton leaned back in his seat. "That, my dear, is the sound of someone enjoying themselves," he said with a smirk. Kathy shook her head. "That has to be a fake noise. He never made me feel that way." "Yeah, but she's smaller than you, and she's probably had more experience," he teased. Kathy frowned. "I still think she's faking it." "Come on, that's just jealousy talking. You're obviously a little bothered by it," he said, laughing. She shot him an annoyed look. Okay. I just think it's funny that you keep me around for a few hours a week and then shine him on if he's not interested. I'm just as good a guy as he is. You just haven't figured that out yet," Ashton said. She sighed. "I have, Adam. It's just that I don't know. I guess I'm just used to him. He makes me feel safe and loved." "I love you, and I will protect you. I promise I won't cheat on you, he said, and she kissed him. A week later, Richard and Jillian left the house after stirring things up with Kathy every night with their passionate moments. A few days later, they met Grant and his wife, Carrie. Do you think they've gotten the message? Carrie asked. You guys moved out a week ago, and you haven't heard a word from them. No, no word. I don't know what to make of their lack of interest, Richard said. They're probably waiting for you to make the first move, Grant suggested. I guess it doesn't matter, except maybe economically, Jillian said. Richard and I are planning on getting married, so a divorce could have some implications financially, but otherwise married? You old devil, Grant exclaimed. Congratulations. That goes for me too, Carrie said. We were going to tell you tonight, said Richard. In fact, just then, he nodded toward the waiter arriving with the ice bucket and a bottle of champagne. But my well-loved intended couldn't wait. I feigned displeasure, but Leland had the decency to look a bit embarrassed. Well, I think it's wonderful, offered Carrie, and Grant echoed her sentiment. I smiled. Yeah, it is. A man in a cheap suit approached our table. Mr. Nelson, he said, looking back and forth between me and Grant. I'm Nelson, I replied, and he handed me an envelope. Your serve, sir, he said before walking off. Everyone looked at me. Well, how do you like them apples? I said, earning knowing looks from everyone. That's why there's been no contact from them. She's decided to make it official. She's dumping me before I could dump her. Wow, said Leland. You can double that for us, said Grant. But we do have the champagne. Now we have 2 toasts to make. He was all smiles. Damn straight, I replied. We clicked our glasses together and toasted twice. Once for my impending marriage to Leland and a second time for the divorce. Our wedding gift from Kathy and Adam. I'd have to remember to send them wedding invitations. For the moment, the divorce papers were put on the back burner. We ate our steaks, drank our wine, maybe too much wine, and made promises related to our wedding. Grant would be my best man, and Carrie would be the maid of honor for Leland. You know, Richard, said Grant, you need to get Marilyn involved in the wedding. She owes you, and I think she'll want to make up for things, if you catch my drift. I gave him a look. Yes, you're right. I will. Leland, I said, one of the bridesmaids? No, said Carrie. I'll be one of the bridesmaids. Marilyn will be your maid of honor. If she agrees, that is. Well, yes, I said. Is that okay with you, honey? Sure, it's a good idea. It will definitely make a statement that your soon-to-be ex-wife will understand, Leland said. It will indeed, I replied, noticing her brows knitted in thought. What day did you say you and Miss Gray were getting married? Asked Marilyn. The 3rd of June, I answered, and I could see she was beginning to cry. Why? What's wrong with the 3rd? Your classes are out on the 10th, Dad. That's the day Mom and Ashton are getting married, she said. God hates me. I know it. Oh, you have a conflict then? I asked, trying to understand. Do you think, Dad? I mean, after everything, yes, I have a conflict, she said. Okay, well, it's too late for us to change dates, so I guess you'll have to choose, just like when you chose to live with your mom instead of me. Dad, I've already told Mom I'd be her maid of honor, she said. Oh, you mean so she can marry the guy who broke our family apart? Well, have a good time, sellout. I stood up from the table, feeling that more talk just didn't make sense to me. It was clear she was aligned with her mother, not with me, so that ended it. I no longer had a daughter, I thought. Dad, please wait, she called after me, but I was gone. Same day, Kathy lamented. Yes, Mom. I heard him again, and this time there will be no making up with him, said Marilyn. You need to go back and tell him you'll be his lady's maid of honor, Ashton suggested. No, Adam. I made arrangements with Mom first. I'm going to stick with my promise, she said. It's Dad's to understand, Marilyn said. Sweetheart, I release you from your promise. Go to your dad. He's still hurt because you chose me over him when we broke up. You're right. If you don't go, he'll consider it the last straw, and you may never see him again, Kathy added. I know, said Marilyn, but Dad is just being stubborn as always. He needs to grow up, not me. Kathy nodded. Okay, I guess we just get on with life and do for ourselves. But I have to say, I feel for your dad. I heard him, and now you have, regardless of his faults. The divorce had gone smoothly, smoother than most, I guessed. There was no alimony from me since she was marrying a wealthy man. She got the house, but I received half the equity in it after they sold it. Dear old Ashton wanted a bigger place now that they were married. Something more fitting to their new status, as I saw it. Yes, Marilyn had been her mother's maid of honor, and now we no longer communicated with them, nor they with us. 2 years had gone by since the divorce. Did I ever think about my ex or my daughter? Sure, occasionally, but I didn't dwell on it anymore. Not since that last day talking with Marilyn. Lillian and I were doing well. We had a new custom-built home on the outskirts of town, 2 newer cars, and a baby on the way, all in our 2nd year of marriage. There was no time to dwell on the past. Lillian was now a full-time homemaker, and the Wild Horse remained my main hangout. It had never been Kathy's place, let alone the Adams, which was far below their status. For whatever reason, on this day, Lillian and I were sitting at a small table toward the back of the Wild Horse, wanting to be a little away from the blaring band music so we could talk in between the dance floor's activity. They didn't see us when they came in. No, not Kathy and Adam. It was Kathy, but she was with another guy, and the way he was showering her with affection as they were escorted to a booth across the room indicated that they were more than just friends. "Look what the cat dragged in," Lillian said. "Got your cell phone?" I asked. "Hell yeah," she replied. "Let me borrow it for a moment. I want to get some pictures of the action." She handed it to me, and I took the shots I wanted. I sincerely doubted that Ashton would be okay with what was happening. I was planning to email the pictures before the sun rose. I didn't have Adam's email, but I still had Marilyn's, and I couldn't wait to send them to her. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when she received them. A month later, I got the news. Ashton Adams was suing his wife of 2 years for divorce. It seems he had evidence of her infidelity. The word was that Kathy got very little in the divorce, barely walking away with her personal belongings and 30% of their jointly acquired assets from their brief marriage. The man Kathy was seeing was a cop named Barry Monroe, a sergeant on the force. Well, as they say, what goes around comes around. I'd sent the pictures to Marilyn anonymously, not knowing if she would cover for her mother or not. Apparently, she hadn't. There was quite the blow-up the day she received them. I learned much later that dear old Adam got the news upon arriving home that evening. Kathy confessed, hoping for a second chance, but Ashton dumped her right then and there. I was reading the details in the society section while having lunch at Denny's when Marilyn popped down in front of me. "You sent me the pictures, didn't you?" she asked without so much as a greeting. "Well, hello to you, Mama's little girl," I replied. "You did, didn't you?" she pressed. "What pictures?" "The ones of Mom and the cop. You know exactly which ones I'm talking about." "Well, if you know, then you don't need confirmation from me," I said. "Look, Dad, okay, you got her, and I suppose you could say you got me too. She deserved it." "Whatever," I said, interrupting her. "Okay, so you're not talking about the pics. I actually came for another reason anyway." "Anyway," she continued, "I've treated you badly. I want to make it up to you." "Will you?" "Will I what?" "Give me away," she said. I stared at her. "Will your mom and Adam or her new guy be there?" "They'll all get invitations," she replied. I nodded. "Okay, I will come, but only if none of the 3 are part of the wedding party. If they are, if any of them are, or if you even ask them to be, I'm out of there. I hope I'm clear." "Okay, what's the other thing?" "I would like to have your wife be my maid of honor," she said. I leaned back in my seat. "Really?" Lillian asked. "After you turned her down?" "Yes, really. That was then, and this is now." "Okay, I'll ask her, but it'll be up to her." "Good enough," said Marilyn. "Sure, I guess, but it was her idea, not yours." "You're sure?" "Yes, all hers and a complete surprise to me," I said. The rehearsal went smoothly. None of the 3 people I didn't want to see were there. I figured they would be at the wedding, but whatever. I felt like I was once again number 1 with my daughter, my wayward daughter, and that meant a lot to me. It didn't make up for everything that had happened, but it did soften the sting. Glenn was a good-looking groom, too. I liked the kid. He seemed to have a good head on his shoulders, and I trusted him to treat my baby right. The reception line was long. At least 50 of her college friends were there, along with all of our friends and relatives. Maybe 100 guests overall. And yes, all 3 of the bad guys were there too. None of them were in the wedding party, but they all sat at tables close to the front. Kathy and her cop at one table, and Ashton at another. I watched Kathy closely. "What's caught your interest, cowboy?" Lillian asked, nodding toward the focus of my attention. "I was just wondering how long before the cop becomes a cuck like Ashton and I said, smiling. "Good question. Maybe she's learned her lesson." "What lesson might that be?" "That the grass is never really greener on the other side of the hill." I snorted. "Yeah, well, I might tend to disagree with you on that one. I mean, look at the grass I'm cultivating now. I can tell you for sure that it is definitely greener than the pasture I used to play in." "You get a point for that one," she said. "And you might get lucky tonight." I laughed. "That's my sincerest hope," I said. After the toasts and dinner, the father-daughter dance was over, and general dancing and drinking were underway. Lillian and I had taken seats at the back to catch our breath after a more than athletic go on the dance floor. I hadn't noticed her coming toward us until she took a seat across from me. "You got me good, didn't you?" Kathy said. I stared at her. "Now what's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" "And good afternoon to you too," said Lillian, smiling widely. "Yes, good afternoon to you too," I echoed. Kathy snickered. "Look, Richard, I just wanted to say no hard feelings. Barry and I talked, and he made me see just how one-sided I'd been and how poorly I dealt with you. I'm sorry. Okay? I wish you and Lillian all the best." "Okay, that's all I had to say," she said. "Yeah, okay. No hard or soft feelings." "If I may," said Lillian. "Of course," said Kathy. "We'll be talking one of these days, all of us," Lillian continued. "But not today. Today is your daughter's day." I nodded my agreement. "I hope we do. I think it would be good if we all could be friends. We'll see. There's a lot of water under the bridge, Kathy, and a lot of it is still pretty brackish, if you know what I mean. But as Lillian is saying, there'll likely be a time." "Good. I'm going to go find Marilyn now and wish her and her man the best." She waved goodbye and strode off in search of the newlyweds, and I supposed her cop as well. It was an hour after our little conversation with Kathy when a dance with my new wife was interrupted by the 2 of them. No, not Marilyn and Glenn, who had been busy the whole time enjoying their own wedding. It was Marilyn and Ashton. This surprised me. "Dad, can the 2 of us talk to you for a minute?" said Marilyn. Huh. I responded, surprised. "I mean, you and, please, Dad?" "Yes, Ashton and I." "Okay, but you'll be talking to both of us," I said, nodding toward my new wife. Well, not really new, who I should add seemed less surprised than I was. "Richard, Mr. Nelson, I think this is the time to maybe mend some fences, if you will allow," said Ashton. "Really?" I said, not feeling particularly accommodating. "Honey, this is Marilyn's day," said Lillian. "Yes, you're right." "Okay, Adams, what do you have?" I said. "Well, it's been a long time, and a lot of stuff. Mistakes? A lot of it." I couldn't argue with his logic. "Daddy," said Marilyn, noting my less than enthusiastic response. "Okay, I'm listening," I said. "Well, as you know, my marriage to Kathy, Marilyn's mom, fell apart. As fate would have it, she didn't allow me the same opportunity she offered you, and I think her new squeeze was instrumental in that choice. I don't know, but all of that is true. I have, over time, bonded with Marilyn. A kind of uncle thing, if you get my drift," he said. "Really? And Marilyn, how am I supposed to react to this?" "In the best of all possible worlds," I said, "ideally, Dad, you and Adam can be friends, maybe even partners down the line. Dad, I know we hurt you. Maybe me more than anybody, but I've grown up. I understand how I should have acted in the beginning. Mom and Ashton here did wrong, not just because of the choices they made, but because of the disrespect they showed you. But things evolve. I've come to know that as weak and mistake-prone as we all are, even you, Dad, it's always possible to fix things and make them right," she said. "What are you trying to say?" I asked. "Get to it. I'm not as smart as you, and I want to get this little can of worms done and over with." "I think what Marilyn is trying to tell us," said Lillian, stepping in at just the right time, is that she intends to have a relationship with the man who was long her stepfather, and she hopes you will be okay with it. Is that about it? Marilyn said. I nodded, but slowly. Your mom is a totally different ballgame. I'll deal with her and Barry. She's hardly in a position to object to anything, said Marilyn. I smiled. Yeah, I guess that's true. I looked over at Lillian. What do you think? Lillian shrugged. No problem as far as I'm concerned. Okay then, baby, I said, addressing Marilyn and nodding in the direction of Adam, who to his credit had so far managed to keep quiet. But Marilyn, you and I still have some things to talk about, just not today. Is that okay with you? Absolutely, Dad. Kathy and the cop did tie the knot about 4 weeks after Marilyn and Glenn did, with Marilyn as her maid of honor. Lillian and I hadn't gotten together as a group with any of them yet, but it would likely happen at some point. People do stupid and selfish things as time goes on. That's life. But then, as often as not, things happen that bring everyone back down to earth. I suppose that will happen to all of us too. Well, the hope is, dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share,